to my kings, queens, and in-betweens. I'm Valerie, and welcome to my channel, The Bookish Valkyrie. So this is my wrap-up for February. Yes, I am filming this at the end of March, and I will be lucky if I have it posted before the beginning of April. But that just seems to be the way things work out for me. Let's get started. So the first book that I finished in the month of February was Where They Saw Her Last by Marcy R. Rendon. This is a book about an Indigenous woman who hears a bone-chilling scream in the woods while she's out running. And when she tries to get somebody to look into it, the response is abysmal, to say the least. This is a very sad and infuriating and scary thriller about real life about real life, about what it's like to be an Indigenous woman in this world, in this country, trying to be seen and trying to be heard and trying to survive and just be okay. And how difficult it is. Like, that's difficult. That's a tall order for anybody, right? Everybody's trying to do that, right? But on top of that, you're a woman, and then on top of that, you're an Indigenous woman. And the world just seems really set against you, like it's got its target on you, and no one is ready to put a hand out to help. And this really brings that into focus. This is talking very heavily about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. And this is a topic that I've heard people talk about for years, and yet it still continues to have such low coverage and continues to have such an out of proportion statistic that it's just mind-boggling and infuriating and terrifying. The subject itself is very important, and the book is very well written. And if you have any interest in reading a thriller that addresses real life issues and is made that much more bone-chilling, because everything that happens in this book is very plausible and very likely to have happened, and something like it has definitely happened in the past. There's no doubt in my mind. So if a thriller that is made that much more chilling by how close to real life it is something that you are interested in, I absolutely recommend this book. And then the next book I read is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is actually a reread for me. It was 5 stars the first time I read it. It is 5 stars now. I still have not picked up Fevered Star, which really just grinds my gears a little bit, but I want to make sure that I'm reading it when I'm in the right headspace, and I just haven't had the bandwidth for this level of fantasy. So, but I really want to get to it while this is still fresh in my mind and fresh in my memory. This is a high fantasy set in pre-Columbian Americas and based on the mythologies of the indigenous people who existed long before Columbus discovered them. And this is their mythos wrapped into a fantasy. And it is wonderful and exciting and just a great ride. So I absolutely recommend this, and I can't wait to get to the next one. And if these are sounding familiar, it's because these first few books all were read in my Jante's Inferno vlog. So if you want some more in-depth looks at me reading these books and at my opinions and thoughts on these books, definitely go check that out. However, we're going to move on to my next read for February, which is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. I did go very much into depth with this one in my vlog, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. Basically, this is a horror story based on the Homes for Wayward Girls, where young women and girls who find themselves with child out of wedlock would go to give birth. This is in the 70s, or the late 60s, early 70s, during the kind of last hurrah for these homes before they started to be disbanded. Although I can tell you that they were still going in the 80s, because I have a friend who personally had an experience being sent there when she found herself pregnant at a very young age out of wedlock. And with the few things that she has told me over the years, the few details that she has told me over the years, they definitely line up with the bullshit that the girls go through in Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. So Grady Hendrix definitely did his research. I do wish that, as this was Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, he had done a little bit more research into witchcraft and maybe based it a little less heavily on the tropes around witchcraft. I understood what he was going for with it, and I understood the messaging that he was going for with it, but he really seemed to miss the mark. And this is something that I think is a problem in a lot of his very female-centric writing, is that he continuously pits women against each other and makes friends not be very good friends. And while I don't mind there being representation of bad friendships, because there are absolutely bad friendships out there and you should be able to recognize them, but if he's going to continue to write about groups of women working together or going through things together, I wish he would show the way that women do band together and the way that women support each other more. I think there's a lot of emphasis that goes into betrayals or imperfections in these people, which I get, and that is completely within the horror genre's usual purview. However, I just think that he is doing women at large a disservice without meaning to, because I think he genuinely is doing his best. I think he does a really great job with his individual depictions of women as real people and not as stereotypes or archetypes or as foils for men or anything like that. He does a really great job with that. However, I think that his books suffer from where he fails to show the heroine's journey that most women experience through life, which is where, rather than very quick and dirty, heroine's journey versus hero's journey. Hero's journey, you end up doing things alone. You find your power in moments when you are alone, and being with people does nothing but harm your story arc. The heroine's journey has you in moments alone, but those are usually your lowest moments, and then you come together with community and friends and family and find strength in that. And you find strength in supporting each other, and you find power in supporting each other. And this is the journey that I think most women experience in life. And this is the journey that I think that is missing in Grady Hendrix books, especially in this book and in Final Girls Support Group. I think that this is the journey that he is missing. This is the piece of the puzzle he is missing to make those stories sing. He can have them be just as violent and just as gratuitous and just as terrifying, just as imperfectly human as they are. But if he changed just some little details and showed these women banding together and finding their strength in each other, I think that his stories would reach a whole new level. And I think that the stories that are already in existence would have been so much better and would have just reached that 5-star all-time favorite level of writing. I think that's why I keep reading Grady Hendrix, because I think he has so much potential. He's just missing a few little pieces of the puzzle. So who knows, maybe one day he'll find them. And then my next read for the month of February was Guilt and Gina Ta'an. This is my physical copy that never really made it on screen during my vlog because of the car accident that I was in. And it was brand new and in perfect condition when I received it. However, it is a little the worse for wear for having been through the ringer, so to speak, which feels appropriate as I was listening to this book on audio when I had my accident. And and the main character does seem like she's going through the ringer a little bit with her friendship in this. I really did enjoy this. I believe I gave it like 3.5 or 4 stars. I know that my main complaint with this still remains, and that's that the rocky friendship situation that was happening throughout this was just sort of waved away with a magic wand. It's all better now. We had a conversation and we're good. There were no details. They didn't show the conversation. They didn't say why things went wrong in the first place. It just kind of got hand waved away, and I didn't love that. Other than that, though, the rest of the book was great, and I had a good time reading it, and I definitely recommend this entire series. And then the next book that I read, still in Jante's Inferno readathon, was Born to be Badger. This is by Shelley Lawrenston, who also has the pen name G.A. Aiken. I love all of the books by her on, both pen names are great. They're just perfect for when you need a good romp and a good laugh. And that's what this was. It was not her best and not her worst. I definitely recommend the Honey Badger Chronicles, which this is the most recent installment of. The Honey Badgers are probably my favorite characters in her little shifter verse. I think that some of the more classic figures who you see in the background of the overarching stories are wonderful to see, and I would absolutely recommend going back and reading those. Just keep in mind that you are going into really old school paranormal romances, so some things may or may not hold up. I honestly can't remember because it's been so long since I read them, but I do feel like she was really progressive for her time, so it may hold up. It's possible that her stuff holds up. We'll see if I ever get around to rereading them. Anyway, I gave this 3.5 stars, and I had a good time reading it. All right, and then the last book that I read for Jante's Inferno was Hood Feminism. I read this on audiobook, and it was narrated by the author. I think that this is a wonderful doorway into thinking about feminism on an intersectional level. And so if that is a journey that is new to you, or you are kind of in the beginning stages of, I absolutely recommend that you read this. If you have already been on this journey for a while, you're probably going to see a lot of things retread, but you're going to get that much more depth and understanding into the issues at hand. So it's not a waste of time. Also, I think that the final chapter, Allies, Anger, and Accomplices, I think that this chapter alone is worth having gone and bought the physical format of this book after having already read it, because I am going to go back over those final pages because I think there are a lot of really impactful and important sum ups and encouragements and actionable thoughts and ideas that come out of that very last chapter. So again, even if this isn't new territory for you, and a lot of the subject matter in here is something you have at least touched on to a small degree, I think it's very much worth it. And that final chapter is a great place for you to spend some time just going through it. So again, pick this up from the library, buy it on audio or in physical, whatever works best for you, but definitely worth picking up. All right, and then the next book that I read in February was the second book in The Vanquishers by Kaale Barron, and that is Secret of the Reaping, and I loved it. It was so good to see these little babies and all of the anarchy they are getting up to, and how much they question everything. And because I think that's something that is missing from a lot of adults thinking, is that adults stop questioning, stop asking questions, stop seeking answers. And I think that that is something that we should be doing on a daily basis, and is something that I really enjoy about reading middle grade and YA books, is because it reminds me to ask those questions and to continue to push those boundaries and make sure that they're there for a good reason and not just because they've always been there. And that is, to me, kind of the theme of this second book in The Vanquishers, is that they are questioning what's always been, asking why it's always been, asking why things are the way they are, and if they should be. And not just, I mean, obviously, the bad things shouldn't be. However, the way that the bad things are addressed may need a little bit of updating. And I think that that is one of the gifts that these children bring to their parents' lives, is reminding them that sometimes just because it's always been doesn't mean it always should be. And I really love this series, and I can't wait to read the third book. It is on hold for Libby, and I don't know how long. It says several weeks. I don't know what that means, but we'll see how long it'll be before I get my hands on this next installment. And then I read the first part in Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Search. It is the comic book follow-up to the Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically to the story of Zuko and Zuko's mom and what happened there, because they definitely, Nickelodeon left you hanging there. It has taken me a really long time to get around to reading this. A lot of the time it just came down to how expensive the comic books were, and so I finally just caved and went ahead and borrowed it from the library. On Libby, I borrowed it on ebook, and I'm glad I did. I think it might have had a lot more impact had I read it a lot closer to when I originally read the Avatar, but I'm very glad to have read The Search. I read parts 1, 2, and 3, although 2 and 3 I read this month, at the beginning of this month. I'm really glad that I read these books. I'm glad that I know what happened with Zuko's mom and with Zuko and his sister, actually. Which I was a little surprised that they decided to bring her back into the story. But I guess I shouldn't have been. It makes sense. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. And if you are a fan of the Avatar series and haven't read this, I definitely recommend it. It was fun. It brought back some of the figures that you see in the series and kind of expands on their backgrounds. But I don't really want to go too much into that because that would be spoilers. However, like I said, I'm really glad that I read it, and I gave it 4 stars for the first one, and I don't remember what I rated the other 2, but I'm pretty sure they're in the 4-star range. Again, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more had I read them much earlier, like back when Avatar had just ended. Anyway, moving on to my next read for February, that is Stars in Your Eyes by Kaale. I don't know why I have hesitated so long on reading this. I have owned this book since it came out. I have it both physically and on audio. I loved this book. I don't know why I took so long to get to this book. Kaale has always been one of my favorite writers. He has a wonderful way of storytelling that is just gripping and engrossing, and I just always end up completely in love with the characters. So this book is definitely a little bit more lit fic for romance than your typical romance. So to keep that in mind, if you are here for the easy HEA, that's not what you've got here. This is definitely a hard one, HEA / happy for now. And actually the author talks a little bit in this through the main character and or one of the main characters and his opinion on happily ever afters. Um, and agree or disagree, a good point was made. And I really appreciate that this was the format in which they chose to address that thought or that take on happily ever afters. This is a wonderful book to read. It will rip your heart out and dance all over it. You will have conflicting emotions about the main characters and their relationship, and you will root for them to the end, and they will eventually get there. But again, it is a very hard won path, but so worth it. And then going into the last book that I finished in the month of February, and that is Guarding Temptation by Talia Hibbert. I love Talia Hibbert. I love her so much. And this is a really quick novella that is just super fun to get through. Our FMC is spicy and spunky and wonderful, and she takes our MMC to task when he deserves it. And it's one of those miscommunication tropes, but it's worth it. Again, I'm not always a fan of the miscommunication trope, especially when it's just sort of thrown in there to give a false sense of tension. I don't think that's the case in this. I think this is a genuine misunderstanding, a genuine miscommunication where conclusions are jumped to, but honestly kind of justifiably, and they are not clarified very well by the MMC until he's pushed into a corner. And I have to say, I always love a main character with their back to a wall and just letting it all out and saying everything that they are feeling and thinking. I think that is a very satisfying moment in any book, especially a romance, and that does not disappoint in this book. So that is everything that I read in the month of February, and thank you for watching this video. If you got this far, leave me a heart emoji in the color of your choice, and just to let me know you were here. And if you're feeling chatty, let me know what your favorite genre is and what your favorite tropes within that genre are, because I covered a whole lot of genres in the month of February and I really enjoyed all of them. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next video. Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of sport days this last week. I need to start over. Thor. It's just kids. They're not going to steal your kibble. It's fine. Come here. Come here. Yeah. Do you need some comfort? Do you need some reassurance? Okay. There you go. You're good.